1935, Maybelle Smith was discovered singing in church, and despite impossible odds, rose to international acclaim. She went on to become Big Maybelle, one of the greatest blues singers of all time, and her incredible story is being told in the new musical, Big Maybelle, Soul of the Blues, which is making its world premiere at Bay Street Theater. The show is written and directed by Paul Levine and stars Tony Award winner Lillias White. And joining us in the studio today, Paul Levine and Lillias White. Thank you both for being here.
Hey, Walker.
Thank you, Walker, for having us here. Hi, everybody.
Good to be with you.
So, Lillias, let's start with you. What attracted you to this project?
Well, initially, I'd heard her song Candy when I was very young, but nobody knew her story. And I'm always interested in finding out things about people that nobody else knows about. And I was very intrigued by the fact that nobody knew her story, and that this was a woman who sang the blues and sang it so honestly. I thought that her story was a story that needed to be told.
And Paul, how did you discover Big Maybelle?
About 15 years ago, a friend of mine in the music business brought over a stack of LPs, and neither one of us had ever heard her voice. And we were just up, most of the night listening and carrying on about what an incredible talent this was that nobody knows about, really, unless you're a blues or jazz historian. Mm-hmm. And I looked, I'm always looking for new stories, and I did a little research. And I mean little. There was really nothing available. Right.
There's no biography. There's really very little even on the internet about her life.
And this was pre-internet, so there was less than less. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I set it aside. And then one morning last summer, I woke up and her voice was in my head. And it was time. Mm-hmm. It was time to get to work, and even with the internet, there wasn't very much. Most of the research centers around her discography, her compiled credits and songs, and there's a little bit here, there's a little bit there, what she recorded, what year, with what studio, what producer, but there was very, very little to go on.
What do you think it was specifically that compelled you to tell her story?
I would say the extraordinary quality of her voice and the fact that so few people know of her or have heard her, and mostly because at the time it was very difficult for a black artist to cross over, black singers to cross over into the mainstream market. Mm-hmm. There were a couple. There was Ella Fitzgerald, there was Billie Holiday, but this was a time when it just didn't happen. And I'm interested in that politically. This is an opportunity to expose, the great Republican lie of Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, everything is good, America. Well, it wasn't so good.
The reality of the 1950s.
And 40s and 50s.
40s, yes.
And 40s.
For a lot of black people, life from Maybelle in the South and touring the Chitlin circuit was staying in all Negro hotels, all Negro restaurants, making sure the KKK wasn't around anywhere.
Right.
And that's a truth that people need to know. So apart from exposing people to this glorious music, which Lillias does, she makes me cry every day in rehearsal.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Is the chance to make people feel something, and when people feel stuff, their hearts open up, and when their hearts open up, we can make change. So we hope to make that change, 300 people at a time in Sag Harbor. And when we move on to New York, maybe 750 to 1,000 people at a time. But it's a change the world kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about the show. It's set in a Cleveland, Ohio psychiatric hospital.
Right, which is where she ended up at the end of her life.
How did you arrive at that decision to set the show in a hospital?
I wanted to do something that really hadn't been done before that I'm aware of. And I needed a way to tell the story I wanted to tell her whole story, but not in a linear way. So what this does, it gives her a chance to reflect on her life and talk directly to the audience, which is, it proves to be wonderfully effective. We did a workshop of this back in
2 years ago.
2 years ago now. And just the way Big Maybelle and Lillias White relate to an audience, we turned this little fluorescent lit, terrible little room into, gospel church, with the audience talking back to Maybelle, and Maybelle talking to them and laughing, and
yeah, we had a good time.
People crying, and So anyway, it turned out to be an effective way to tell the tale.
Now, I assume she flashes back in time to tell her story.
Yes, she does.
Lillias, is it fun to play that juxtaposition, going from the character of Maybelle at her lowest to peak moments in her life?
Well, yes, it is. It's almost like each time we run through it, there's a discovery that I make as an actor, as a singer, and as someone who's looking into the history of this woman whose life, it wasn't easy for her, but she kept going on the road. She kept at her music, which was her passion. She kept falling in love or being in love, sometimes to her detriment. And it's a very human story. It's a very much a story that a lot of people can relate to. She had a bout with drug abuse, and there are lots of people who are not poverty-stricken necessarily, or who have those kind of issues that she had in terms of race, who have the same kinds of ups and downs in their lives that she had. So I think this is a story that people can relate to.
I know that she was beloved by her audiences. The exchange, as you mentioned, Paul, the exchange between Maybelle and her audiences and Lillias and her audiences, spellbinding. What do you think she had? What was it about Maybelle Smith as a person, as a performer, that captivated an audience?
Well, I think that from just a little bit of footage that we've been able to get of her audiences were enamored with her vibrance. She had a great energy on stage. She really gave it all. She was diabetic, so her feet were always hurting her, and there were lots of pictures of her standing flat-footed on the stage with no shoes on. I can totally relate to that. And anyone who's seen me perform knows that at some point in my shows, my shoes come off.
The shoes come off.
Shoes come off, and then it's really on. So I think that's what the audience got from her. It was, and when you listen to her voice, there's a passion there. There's a cry. There's a little tweak that she does. It's sort of like a little hiccup in the voice that adds to the passion and the romance, I think, of someone who's been through the mill and who's still standing and wants you to know what's on her heart.
And she's bearing her soul.
Absolutely.
Through her voice.
Absolutely.
And you can relate to that, I'm sure, as a singer.
Absolutely.
Well, Lillias has something very much in common with her. And what it is, she has it.
Yes.
And we all know that when we see it. And it's a very special thing, and it's rare. It's a very rare quality. And it's giving, the way Lillias gives her heart, gives her soul, gives her passion to this role. And I've seen her in several things, and in all of them, they wind up being very personal, very intimate. And if you see Aretha Franklin, or if you see, I was lucky enough to see Ella Fitzgerald back in the day, you're just in the presence of it, and you just know it.
Yes, yes. There's a story involving Billie Holiday and Big Maybelle. Can you tell that story?
I'll let Big Maybelle tell it.
Okay.
Well, the story goes that one night in Newark, New Jersey, Big Maybelle opened for Billie Holiday, and the audience response was so great and so long-lasting until Billie Holiday refused to go on. and ended up leaving the venue.
Tell them what Maybelle says in the show.
No, I don't want to tell what Maybelle says. Okay. I want you to come and see for yourselves what Maybelle says. Good. But that's the story. That's how the story goes. That Billie Holiday was just too through. That this woman was who ahead of her opened for her and kind of stole the show. So she walked out and she didn't do the show.
Was it 3 standing ovations?
It was 3 standing ovations. Yes. 3 standing ovations. The audience went wild for Big Maybelle.
Loved Billie.
She loved Billie.
I'm sure.
And she was looking forward to meeting her and telling her how much she loved her singing. But Billie was not receptive to that. She dissed her.
She walked her jealous ass right out the back door. Can I say ass?
Absolutely, yes, you can. I'm sure that Maybelle didn't expect to wound Billie Holiday's pride.
No. She that I'm sure never entered her mind. I mean, any performer. This has happened to me personally, where I was opening for another show, and it was at a festival, and the audience, when I was done, they kind of figured it was over, and some of them waited for the other show, and they started watching the other show, and then little by little they started trickling out the back door, trickling out of the theater. So those girls were really mad at me, and I'm really sorry, but it wasn't my fault. I was just doing what I do. But after that, when I went to the festival the next time, they said, "No, you're not opening for anyone. You're going to be the show." So, but yeah, that's what happened with Billie, and Maybelle, I'm sure, was very anxious to meet her and speak with her, but it just didn't happen.
If you're just joining us, I'm speaking to multiple award-winning writer and director Paul Levine. He is the writer and director behind Big Maybelle, Soul of the Blues, which is coming to Bay Street Theater, and the star of the show, Tony, Drama Desk, and Emmy Award-winning Lillias White in the role of Big Maybelle. The show begins previews at Bay Street on August 7th, and it opens August 11th, making its world premiere. More of our conversation in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
We flying women, they listen while they do you head.
If you're just joining us, I'm speaking to multiple award-winning writer and director Paul Levine. He is the writer and director behind Big Maybelle, Soul of the Blues, which is coming to Bay Street Theater, and the star of the show, Tony, Drama Desk, and Emmy Award-winning Lillias White in the role of Big Maybelle. The show begins previews at Bay Street on August 7th, and it opens August 11th, making its world premiere. Lillias, how did you prepare for this role?
I've been listening to the CDs that Paul sent me, and I've been finding out whatever I could find about her on the internet. And I went back with my vocal teacher, Susan Eichhorn, and we have been redesigning, reformulating, restructuring my voice so that I can sing the way Big Maybelle sings. So I don't want to copy her, but I want to sound a little more like her than I sound like myself. So her voice is lower than mine. It's got this gritty kind of gospel squall to it. Her voice is husky. It's down here, and my voice is pretty much here. So that's how I've been preparing. I've been really mostly preparing myself vocally.
I've also given her 30 songs to sing.
That's a lot.
Not always the complete song, but this is quite an effort, and really, God is my witness, this is a tour de force performance that if your audience is interested in great music, in great performance, this is a moment that you will always remember, I promise you. If you don't, get in touch and I'll give you your money back.
Paul, I mentioned this earlier to Lillias that every once in a blue moon, and it's actually a blue moon this month, along comes the role of a lifetime. Lillias, you've done multiple Broadway shows. I think Sonia in the Life was maybe one of those roles of a lifetime for you.
Yes, I've been very, very, very blessed.
Do you see this, Big Maybelle, as the role of a lifetime?
I absolutely do. I mean, it's really a gift of a role. to be able to tell the story of someone that no one else knows about, that not many people know about, and to make it, to lay the groundwork and the foundation for this role, for this show. It's a gift, to be able to, especially if you're doing theater, to be able to create a role. There's nothing like it. You put your stamp on it, and then whoever comes behind you can hope. They can only hope that they can follow in your footsteps. And so I've been on both sides of that coin, and I really do like the creative part of it.
Talking about the sort of the blessings and the magic that's been surrounding this show, I went to school, it turns out, to high school with the fellow who runs the Bay Street Theater, who received the play from a terrific New York agent named Dennis Asplund, who is married to the sister of a friend of mine, also from Stony Brook.
Is this Murphy Davis?
Murphy Davis.
Okay.
And so this is all sort of, cosmic serendipity. And right after that, Lilius, and then I found Lilius. Actually, before that, I found Lilius. Went up to see her in a Cy Coleman review up in Ventura, California, and had the show in my briefcase. And met her after the show and gave it to her. Please do this. And she was gracious enough to say yes. Then, not too long after that, Lilius was at a birthday party for a renowned Broadway producer named Martin Richards, who produced the original Sweeney Todd, La Cage aux Folles, on the 20th century.
The Life
with Lilius, and he said to Lilius, darling, I would love to work with you again. If there's some way we can work together again. By any chance, do you have anything? And she says, well, as a matter of fact, I do.
Yeah.
So Marty joined us as a producer, and what a blessing for me to have an opportunity to work with a legend like Martin Richards. And it just keeps happening that way,
It keeps getting better.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just in the theater, and I heard the band playing for the first time together. You are going to, Lilius, you are going to love this.
I'm so looking forward to it.
There's nothing like that. The first time you hear the band, the first time you hear the orchestra.
It's so exciting. And they're building the sets and the smell of sawdust and construction. There's just nothing like that.
The Bay Street Theater is a lovely little theater. It's 3/4 round thrust. And it's cozy. But the sound itself, even without amplification, the sound is a very good sound in the room there. And everybody there is really excited about this project, particularly because there's such a great possibility of it moving from Bay Street out into the world at large, namely to New York and maybe beyond. I think that this show would do really well in any part of Europe. Or wherever people like good music. So
yes.
I think that there's a lot of hope here. Things have come together. Let me knock wood. Very nicely. I'm just very optimistic about the whole thing.
If you're not a theater person, don't worry about it. Just come and listen, because it's a real musical treat, not only to hear these 30 songs that, some of which you'll know, but some of which you won't know. And they're all classics of the blues. And they tell a very personal story that's relevant not only to Maybelle, but to everyone in the audience. Right. Everybody goes through stuff. And the blues talks about that. It talks about the stuff in life that we're all experiencing. So it's very relatable.
There's also, I think, something about the blues that kind of helps you get through whatever you're going through. Sometimes the blues is a sad song, but not always. Sometimes the blues song will tell somebody that's broken your heart, you can kiss my butt, you know. and so the blues is all of that. Your heartache, there's heartache in the blues, but there's also redemption, and there's liberation.
Hope.
There's hope.
She sings a song called Gabbin' Blues, which, according to blues and jazz historians, is a seminal piece in the development of storytelling in music. And it's said to be the first song ever recorded that dialogues between two black women, and is said to be a precursor to rap and hip-hop. Imagine that, from the early 1950s. And the way it's staged, we have, these two women sort of walking around each other, one of whom's saying, you stay away from my man. I know what you're up to. And saying, don't you tell me what to do. I'll stand wherever I want. I'll do whatever I want. There's a song called Hairdressing Blues, or Hairdressing Women.
It talks about, and I know that all women within the sound of my voice, if you've been to the hairdresser, the beauty parlor, the salon, then you are going to be able to relate to this song. Because it talks about women who do your hair. You go get your hair done, and you blah, 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 you blah, blah, blah. And the next day, everything that you blah, blah, blah about is potentially all over town.
All over town, right.
So I think, there's something in it for everyone.
And speaking of women, what we learned from our workshop in the audience, questionnaires at the end, was because of Maybelle's issues, her issues of weight, diabetes, hypertension, dependency, but particularly the weight issue. There were so many cards with women saying, thank you for dealing so honestly, candidly, but yet joyfully with some of the issues we have about being big.
Still.
Yes.
Especially now that we're on this health kick, which is great.
Sure.
Absolutely. But,
But it really shows a correlation between a woman's weight, her size, her girth, and a woman's self-esteem. And that issue is talked about quite a bit.
Because she owned it. She was comfortable in her own skin.
She had to learn to be comfortable because she was heavy since she was a child. So she had to learn how to deal with the fact that she did not look like the other stars of her era. She didn't look like Lena Horne. She didn't look like Ethel Waters. She didn't look like anybody else. She was a big girl. And but she had issues with it. She was made to feel bad about the way she looked. So she had to learn how to deal with that.
And she didn't know, rarely ever, why men were with her.
Right. She didn't always know if maybe they were curious to be with somebody that looked like her, or if they really, were digging on her.
There were certain men that had a thing for big girls. And she didn't want to be seen as just a big girl. This was a woman with a big heart.
Right, exactly.
And she wanted to be loved.
And she struggled with her own self-worth.
Yes, absolutely. She did.
And she talks about that in the show.
Well, it has been a pleasure. And by the way, you're both even because you said ass and you said butt. I've been over here keeping score, if anyone's interested. This afternoon, I've been speaking with the team behind Big Maybelle, Soul of the Blues, Paul Levine, the show's writer and director, and the star of the show, the incredibly talented, Tony Award-winning Lillias White in the role of Big Maybelle. The show begins previews at Bay Street Theater on August 7th, and it opens on August 11th, making its world premiere. And go see it. The workshop of the show alone caused an uproar of interest and word of mouth, and Ms. White's performance was heralded by multiple standing ovations, just the way that Maybelle's performances were. So,
and if you come based on hearing us on the show, come say hello.
Please do.
Please do.
And for tickets and more info, go to baystreet.org or call 725-9500. And we're going to let Big Maybelle lead us out with her 1956 hit single Candy, which received the Grammy Hall of Fame Award in 1999. Lilias White, Paul Levine, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Walker.
Thanks, Walker.
Thanks so much.
It's good to be with you.
Candy, why I call my sugar candy. I'm sweet on candy.